Now we're going to look at another type of iterable in Python, and this is a set. And a set has different limitations and capabilities than other iterables. But let's go over some of them. So is a set changeable? No. You can't change the value of an item in a set. It's sort of, the value is set in concrete. You can add and remove, however. Are they indexed? No. Are they ordered sequentially? No. In this case, they're just randomly ordered. And when you retrieve the values, they can appear in any random fashion. Does it allow duplicates? No. You can't have any two items that have the same value inside of a set. Again, similar iterables, but with different limitations, different capabilities, would be a tuple, a list, a dictionary in Python. Unlike a tuple, created parenthetically with parentheses, or a list, which is like an array created with the square brackets, in this case, a set would be created with curly braces. Okay. They can contain different data types, just like tuples. And some of the methods, len to get the number of elements, length, append, remove, just like you have with a list type iterable, extend, insert, index, pop, clear, sort, and copy. All right, so some of the methods. Let's take a look at creating, in this case, a simple set. And we're just going to display it, the whole set. And I'm just going to show you that it's, when I retrieve the value, all right, of that set, the place or the order is not maintained. So I may create it and Twilight Sparkle's element, 0, it's the first one, and Pinkie Pie is the last one. But there's no guarantee when I retrieve the value of that set that it's going to maintain that sequential relationship. I'm going to hit F5. Okay, and look, I have all the strings in the set, but in this case, Twilight Sparkle, Fluttershy was the second element, but when I retrieved it and called it, Rarity was the second element. And here, right, Rainbow Dash is the last element, but when I declared it, when I first built it, Pinkie Pie was the last element. So that just shows you that with a set, unlike other types of iterables, the values aren't stored sequentially. They're not, you don't retrieve them in an orderly fashion, but it sort of comes at you in a random way. Again, I hit F5 and run it. So look, Pinkie Pie is the first element and Applejack is the last in our set. That's when we retrieve it, that's how it comes to us. But here, when we defined it, Twilight Sparkle was the first and Pinkie Pie was the last. So we retrieve it, Pinkie Pie, Applejack, but when we created it, Twilight Sparkle and Pinkie Pie, comes at us in a random order. If I call this again, I'll run the function again. Look, it's not the same as it was before. The 6 strings are there, but the way they're returned to us is randomly, just illustrating the process. Let's look at the add method. So we can add a single item to a set. It can't add a set to another set, but we could add a single item. Let's say we want to add a string or an integer or some other data type. We could. So here we declare a set with our curly braces, and it's all strings. Before our set is, and then number of items in this set, and we're using the len method, right? Returns the number of items, the number of elements. Notice we can use the add method. We're going to add 2 more strings, Princess Celestia and Princess Luna. And then we'll display the set after the set and then the number of items in the set, just to illustrate what happens when we use the add method and using the len method here. So hit F5. Okay. So before, the number of items is 6. After, the number of items is 8. So yes, we can append. We can add items to our set, unlike a tuple where we'd have to cast it to, say, a list and then cast it back to a tuple just to be able to add or remove items. Let me clear the console, and we'll take a look at function number 5. Let's go look at function number 5 here. Let's look at the update method. This method would allow us to add an entire set to another set. Could also add other iterables. Let's say you wanted to add a list or a dictionary or a tuple to a set. You could do that, or a set to a set. But to illustrate, we'll create 2 sets here, main characters and antagonist. Before, again, we're going to call length. We're going to use update to combine those 2 sets together. And once they're combined together, we're going to display the length again, okay? The number of strings in the set. So I'm going to hit F5 to run. All right, the first time, the number of items in the set is 6, right? But when we call length again, after we use the update function to join them both together, it's 12, because the 6 strings in the first set were combined with the 6 strings in the second set. Just using the update method, an example. So we looked at using the update method with a set. In this example, let's take a look at using the remove method. And it does just what it says. It can be used to remove an item from a set. So we declare a set up here with curly braces. We get the length of it. We're going to remove 2 strings, and then we're going to get the length again with len. And let's see what happens. Hit F5. So it was 6. We removed 2 items, and now it's only 4. And again, it throws an exception if that item does not exist. What if I tried to remove an item that wasn't there? Let's generate an error on purpose. Hit F5 to run. Boom! All right, exception has occurred. Why? Key error. Lord Tyrek doesn't exist in that set, so we can't remove it. I'm going to stop debugging here. But again, if the item does exist, there is a rainbow dash. I'll clear the screen. Let's run it again. 6, and then after 2 removes, now there's only 4, okay? So just an example of remove and the exception that it will throw if you try to remove an item that does not exist in the set. Let's look at the discard method, and this removes a single item from a set. But there's no exception if the item doesn't exist. Again, I'm going to run the code. We'll do the same thing as the previous example, right? We start out with 6, we remove, and we have 4 left. So here's 6, here's 4. But what if the item doesn't exist? You know, Lord Tyrek is not in the set. If I hit F5, okay, no exception is thrown as it was in the previous example, all right? So up here, when we did that using the remove method, it threw an exception. And if we wanted to, we could catch that exception and handle it. But when we're using discard, it doesn't matter whether it exists or not, it doesn't throw an exception. It doesn't return any type of error value, okay? In this next example function, we're going to take a look at using the pop method, okay? The pop method functions sort of like remove or discard, but it just removes whatever happens to be the last item or element in the set. But since when you retrieve those values, they're returned in a random fashion, you can never be quite sure what you're going to remove when you call pop. So it's safer to call pop with a different type of iterable, such as a list, where you could specify the index value and where you could be sure of what you were removing. But just to illustrate that we can do that and that it's in a random fashion, let's run this method a few times. So we'll run the same function here. I'm going to hit F5. We're going to call pop twice, pop, pop. So it reduces it from 6 to 4, but the item's removed. And this time we'll run it again and I'll show you, we'll get a different result. Okay. So Pinkie Pie, Applejack, Rarity, and Twilight Sparkle, but here we have Rainbow Dash, Rarity, Applejack, and Twilight Sparkle. So we remove them, but we can't specify arguments. We can't specify the order. So if that's the case, you would want to use pop with a different type of iterable. Let's go take another look at another example function. And we'll go look at function number 9. And this is the clear method. In this case, if we want to clear all the items in a set, and you can use this method with other iterables as well. And there are situations where you want to do that, say where you initialize an app, and you might want to, say it's a game, and they're starting a new game. You might want to call clear on a list type iterable, or a set so that it starts out, with a clean slate, so that it's fresh. So we're going to do that. We're going to call clear. We'll call len before and len after, just to illustrate the result of using the clear method to clear a set or another type of iterable. These methods, a lot of these methods are used in other types of iterables as well. I hit F5. All right, so before clear, there's 6. After clear, there's 0 in our set. Let's go take a look at another example, and we'll clear the console. And we'll look at example number 10, function 10. And let's look at the delete method. So let's say that we're done with this set. We just want to get rid of it, okay? Completely deletes and destroys an entire set. So we create a set here before we get the length of the number of items in the set. Here we call delete on the entire set object. And then afterwards, if we get it and get the length, what would be the value returned? Let's hit F5. Generates an error. Why? Because we're trying to call length on something that doesn't exist, right? When we call delete on set MLP fem main characters, it didn't just clear all the elements in the set, but it wiped out the entire set. So when I call length here on set MLP fem main characters, it's length on a null object, right? It's none. There's nothing there. And that's because we called delete on it. If I didn't call delete, then I could do this. Let me stop debugging, and we'll run it again. See? No problem. But if I'm going to call delete on a set or another type of iterable, let me hit F5. Boom! Okay? I can't access a null object. That's a problem. It no longer exists in memory. There's nothing to call length on if I call delete in this instance. Function number 11. Looping, just like any other iterator, we can plug them into a for loop. So we create a set up here, okay? We use length to get the number of items in the set. We show the number of items in the set, okay? And this is for X and set MLP fem main characters up here. And then here we're just going to count them. And we're going to, we have a string here. We're going to convert character, our integer, to a string. So we parse it. We cast the data type to a string so we can display it. And we're going to take our object here, our y, and we're going to also, cast that to a string. So we'll take its value as well as its, number, how it appears. We'll store it in message 1, and then in message 2, we'll return the data type. Okay? I'm just going to display both of those with our print method. So just looking at how it works in a repetition structure, just like any other iterable, right? We can go through it. So we're getting the items, Twilight Sparkle, Rarity, Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, Applejack, Fluttershy. But in this case, look here, here's the data type of all those classes of object. Let's look at our last example here of a set. And sets 12, function 12. Let's look at the union method. And it returns a new set containing all items from both sets that have been brought together, joined, unified. So in this case, we have two sets, main characters, antagonists. We're going to call the method union, and we're going to say, in this case, this set, the main characters, we're going to call union and pass in the antagonist set, the second set. So we'll join those two sets together. And we'll just display that. We'll assign that to total cast, and we'll display that as total cast. Hit F5. So cast of main characters, cast of antagonists, there's just 6, there's 6. Notice after we call the union method and we combine them together, we have 12. So it's both those sets combined. Just an illustration of the union method with sets. With sets, you have all these methods and functions. And many of them you also have with other iterables, other classes of iterables, such as a list type object in Python. So just sort of be aware of these: add, clear, copy, difference, update, discard, intersection, update, is disjoint, is subset, is superset, pop, remove, symmetric difference, update, union, and update. These methods here, and again, you will use many of these methods with other types of iterable objects in Python.